are 20 mind-blowing facts you never knew about American Dad. Number 20. Klaus was meant to be French. His German nationality is a central part of the character, but that wasn't always the case. Originally, the Smiths' pet fish was going to be named Francois and be of French origin. The switch, in fact, only happened because D. Bradley Baker couldn't do a French accent convincingly, so in his auditions, he asked the producers if he could do a German one instead, and they absolutely loved it. Just think of the missed comedy potential here. You could have had French fries, which are a bit like chips, which is what you have served with fish. There's one. 19. There's multiple Underdog production logos. If you're the sort of person who doesn't immediately change the channel the moment the credits roll, then A, absolutely fair play, but B, you'll be very familiar with the Underdog Productions card. A subgroup of Fuzzy Door Productions that was made specifically to produce American Dad, their post-credits title card features a security guard who, incidentally, used to work at the studio, saying goodbye to the audience. There is, in actual fact, 4 different versions of this, and they're all just variations of the bye, have a great time one that's already stuck in your head. Basically, they sometimes swap out the great with either wonderful or beautiful, and sometimes they get absolutely hog wild by saying have a great night. Number 18. It was meant to be a replacement for Family Guy. One common complaint leveled against American Dad, at least early on in its run, was that it was very similar to Family Guy. Well, it could have been a lot worse. American Dad was actually intended to be a full-time replacement for the show. The Griffins had been off the air for a few years at this point when the Smiths were first conceived, with the network hoping it would appease the fans angry at the first show's cancellation. Why Fox chose to give someone with a failed show another chance, we don't know, but ultimately it didn't matter. Family Guy returned just as American Dad started. Number 17. The writers listen to music for ideas. Ever wondered where all the warped internal logic of the show comes from? Well, wonder no more, friends, as Mike Barker, series creator and showrunner up until the recent season 11, revealed many of the show's ideas come from listening to music. He gives particular credit to Wax Fang and Lol Just Look at Them, whose songs he describes as inherently cinematic. Do you have to wonder though what else is getting passed around that writer's room besides the vinyl? Number 16. The original Steve. Before American Dad was picked up for a full series, the creators made a short pilot to get their point across to Fox. Following the same script as the first episode that ultimately aired, it's visually quite different, in particular when it comes to Steve. Being played here by Ricky Blitt, the design for the character was changed when Scott Grimes came on board and just became decidedly less Big Bang Theory. Number 15. Fox lied about the 150th episode. Yeah, weird one this, but back in season 9, Fox made a massive deal about American Dad's 150th episode. This was, of course, Lost in Space, which sees Jeff bargain for his freedom with slavers from Roger's species. The thing is, this is actually the 151st. The real 150th, the full cognitive redaction of Avery Bullock and the coward Stan Smith, had aired a week earlier. But Adam, why would they do this, I hear you ask? Well, no real reason beyond they just thought it was a better episode to make a big deal of and assumed nobody would notice. Which, I mean, you didn't, did you, until you watched this? Number 14. Roger in Blue Harvest. At the start of It's a Trap, Family Guy's parody of Return of the Jedi, Roger pops up as a Death Star commander. Darth Vader Stewie drawing attention to the fact he's there because they've simply gone through all their own characters. Tims and Klaus also appear in the episode, and yes, there they are. But while this is the first time there'd been an American Dad character playing a named supporting role, it wasn't the first time one had appeared. Yes, if we can just freeze it right there, yes, in the Blue Harvest cantina scene, there is Roger enjoying 2 glasses of wine. Number 13. Haley is Seth's sister. Yeah, we've all done it. Seen the name Rachel McFarlane pop up in American Dad's credits and wonder exactly what relation she is to Seth MacFarlane, if indeed one at all. Well, Rachel, who plays Haley, is Seth's youngest sister and has in fact been a voiceover artist since well before her brother broke big. She's lent her voice to Family Guy, the Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, Scooby-Doo, Robot Chicken, Tom and Jerry, StarCraft 2, Star Wars Resistance, and even The Orville. The more you know. Number 12. The pilot is the most viewed episode. American Dad first aired mid-season, with its initial run only consisting of 7 episodes. For a bit of context there, all the following seasons have been much closer to the 20 mark. While this obviously gave it less of an opportunity to make a big impression, it did allow the first episode to air in the coveted post-Super Bowl spot in February. This led to the show's best ever viewership, with 15.1 million people tuning in to see the Smiths debut. The show retained a good chunk of the audience when the series proper started in May, but by the time the first season was over, the audience had more than halved. Still though, for something like this, 7 million is pretty solid. Number 11, She Will Survive and The Longest Distance Relationship are tied for the least viewed. Despite going from strength to strength in terms of quality, as the show continued, the ratings began to decrease. By the time its run on Fox was coming to an end, it was barely bringing in 2 million viewers. She Will Survive and The Longest Distance Relationship, the latter the finale of season 10, were the worst viewed episodes with only 2.36 million apiece. This decline sadly continued, the show moved to TBS, and the rest, as they say, is history. Number 10, Seth MacFarlane didn't understand it. Even though he's the face most commonly associated with the show, for the initial part of its run, Seth MacFarlane admits he didn't really get American Dad. Fellow creators Mike Barker and Matt Weissman were likewise unsure of what the show's unique voice was. But of course, as showrunners, they were the ones who had to actually discover it. It took them 3 full seasons to fully establish the show's weirder USP, but when they did, MacFarlane liked it so much he opted to spend more time on it. Number 9, George Washington Carver didn't invent peanut butter. Yeah, this is less something intrinsically linked to American Dad and more just a widespread misunderstanding. But seeing as though Black Mystery Month, the episode in which American Dad jokingly furthers this misconception, is so damn entertaining, it's sort of worth including. Who actually invented peanut butter is still up for debate, mostly amongst Reese's fanatics, but we can say with some certainty that one person who definitely didn't invent it was George Washington Carver. Yes, he was an inventor, yes, he did a lot of stuff with peanut oils, but he never invented jelly's best friend. Sorry. Number 8, Roger's voice was based on Paul Lynde. In Family Guy, the inspiration for Peter Griffin's voice was a security guard Seth MacFarlane knew at school. When it came time to craft the voices for American Dad, however, he went for someone with a little more notoriety. Roger's voice, in pretty much every single way, is an impression of Paul Lynde. I mean, just listen to the end of sentence inflection. Best known for playing Uncle Arthur in Bewitched and being a recurring centre square on Hollywood Squares, Lynde died in 1982, meaning there is an entire generation who have first experienced him through a cartoon alien. Number 7, the basic setup is the same as All in the Family. While the very opening of Family Guy is a throwback to All in the Family, it turns out the love for the show didn't stop there. In the early seasons, when things were a lot more grounded, the show's setup was intentionally the same as the 70s sitcom. Specifically, the core premise of a straight-talking, straight-lined father repeatedly clashing with his free-spirited daughter over both her politics and her slacker boyfriend. Things have changed a lot since back then, of course, and while I've only watched a handful of episodes, I'm yet to see a single talking fish in All in the Family. Number 6, the original opening was totally different. Steve wasn't the only thing from the original pilot that changed before the show finally aired. The original opening was far more simplistic, featuring the name of the show fading into the flag outside the Smith house, with Frank Sinatra's "You're a Lucky Fellow, Mr. Smith" playing over the top. Yeah, I mean, I want to be kind and say it's just a placeholder, but given that the song repeats throughout the pilot, it might actually be for real. Number 5, one episode was delayed for an entire year. With episodes taking years to produce, written long before the original air date is ever decided, there's always going to be some discrepancies between production order and release order. American Dad reportedly has a huge backlog of episodes, and with only a fleeting attempt at narrative, they can air pretty much whenever. Minstrel Krampus, par exemple, was due to air only a couple of days after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, but was pulled out of sensitivity due to the amount of gun violence it contained. Being a Christmas special, they just shelved it for the year after, and nobody was any the wiser. Number 4, Seth MacFarlane owns a DeLorean. If you've ever wondered where the inspiration came from for the DeLorean Storian, the episode where Stan restores one of the famous cars despite never having seen Back to the Future, it's, well, half the production staff own one. Most notably, of course, is Seth MacFarlane himself, because there is nothing more irresponsible on this earth than a rich nerd. Number 3, there is a season misnumbering fiasco. Haha, yes, this is a good one. The first season of American Dad was only 7 episodes long, but sometimes these are just lumped in as one group with the 16 episodes of the conventional season 2, as they were all part of one production run. This obviously throws off the numbering of the other seasons when described on TV and on DVD, making it rather tricky to keep track of what episodes you have and haven't seen. This has only been complicated more by the TBS revival. The first 3 episodes of season 11 all aired on Fox before they switched to TBS, who subsequently took on all the remaining episodes of that season. Now, technically, that makes all of that season 12, but obviously it doesn't because it's all part of season 11. So, yeah, you tell me. Number 2, it's born out of the 2000 election. Although it first burst onto our screens in 2005, American Dad existed as a concept for a while. When George Bush won the 2000 presidential election, Seth MacFarlane and Matt Weissman were far from happy. Rather than just bitching about it aimlessly, they wanted to try and find a creative way to deal with it. With MacFarlane's star ever rising, a few years later, he had the clout to actually turn this idea into reality, making, as he did, something designed to send up everything wrong with the then current government. And I mean, God knows, God only knows what he would have made if he just waited until 2016. Number 1. The original plan for Roger. Originally imagined as a housebound fugitive, it soon became apparent that the Area 51 escapee was just too much fun to confine to the four walls of the Smith house. From this, the whole idea of Roger's various characters was born, and the show was irreversibly changed. But things could have gone much further had a short-term plan to give Roger a bigger arc not ultimately been scrapped. You see, after finding a penchant for costumes, the alien was going to be revealed to the general public. And once the media fanfare had wound down, he'd find himself missing the spotlight, with his stories